Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. If you are here for the top 5 reasons why you're still asking your big data small questions webinar, you are in the right place. We are going to allow a couple more minutes for the rest of the audience to dial in, and we will get started shortly. In the meantime, enjoy the music, enjoy the questions, and we will be right back. Once again, thank you so much for being here with us today. If you're here for the top 5 reasons why you're still asking small questions to your big data, you are in the right place. I am going to allow 1 more minute or so for the rest of the audience to dial in, and we will get started shortly. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. My name is Lucio Daza. I direct technical marketing here at Dremio, and today we have a very exciting presentation prepared for you. Before we begin with the top 5 reasons why you are still asking your big data small questions, we are going to run you by a couple of housekeeping items. So the first one is how you are going to ask questions. This is your time to understand. This is your time to learn. We are here for you today, and we want you to ask any questions that you may have. For that, go ahead and use that Q&A button that you will see in your Zoom interface. Hit that little Q&A button. It will open this canvas right there. Just go ahead and put any question that you want in there, and we will definitely follow up through the presentation. If you have any technical difficulties, if I'm speaking too low, if I'm speaking too loud, or if I'm going too fast or too slow, just go ahead and raise your hand. We will go ahead and address the issue. And also you can chat with the rest of the audience using the chat button that you will see there. Or if you want to ask any questions to the rest of the audience, you can as well. I repeat, if you have any questions, just go ahead and do the Q&A button. Otherwise, we won't be able to get that annoying alert that says, hey, you have a question, go ahead and answer it. All right. If you put it in the chat window, I'll try to get to it, but I cannot guarantee that we will see it. If for any reason we cannot or we don't get to the question that you are asking, we will definitely follow up with you via the email that you used to register for this webinar. So today, we are going to talk about the top 5 reasons why you are still asking your big data all these small questions. Why are you being shy with your big data? And for that, I have with me my dear friend, Scott Gay. Scott, thank you for being here with us.
Hi, Lucio. Pleasure to be here.
Super, super happy to have Scott here. And he is a senior solutions architect here at Dremio. And I couldn't think of anyone else more indicated for this situation. We're going to talk about real use cases that we have seen in the industry. And Scott, obviously, he spends a lot of time with our customers and helping them and succeed with our products. So we're going to pick his brain today. We're going to take advantage of all the experience that he has. So let's go ahead and get started. So what are we doing today? In the next 45 minutes or so, we schedule an hour for this webinar, but I think we're going to have enough to talk for the next 45 minutes. We're going to tackle those 5 reasons that we were able to identify. And then each one of these 5 reasons, we're going to have a fireside chat with Scott. And at the end, we are going to have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. So let's go ahead and start talking. And Scott, this is a conversation I was looking forward to have with you, because this entire webinar is going to be based on the data lake. We have a lot of information, a lot of data that we are producing. We have any data-driven company is witnessing right now the fact that data is just growing. And this is something that I was able to identify many years ago. Data is extremely cheap right now to preserve than throwing it away. So we have some numbers here to share with you, and then I'm going to explain also how is it that we went ahead and identified those 5 reasons why big data is not being completely used. Data is growing at a very, very rapid rate, and especially we have seen this going on Amazon S3, obviously ADLS and Hadoop as well, but cloud is something that everyone is using right now for many, many reasons. And we also have here a statistic that says that by 2025, and this is something that blows my mind, by 2025, more than 50% of the data that we are generating will live on the cloud data lake storage. Now, I want to disagree a little bit with this number that I have here, because I think at the rate that we're going with right now, and I know this is just 5 years away from now, but I do recall a lot of predictions saying by 2020 something is going to happen, and that happened way before that. So I think more than 50%, I would dare to say that of data is going to live in the cloud, if that is not the situation right now. And data lives in the cloud for many reasons. We are taking advantage of the cloud because is cost effective, is elastic, and we are going to, Scott and I, we're going to discuss at the end of the presentation our view on data lakes now versus how a data lake was perceived years ago when the whole the actual data lake term was coined. So it's easy to set up, is cost effective, is elastic. You have virtually limitless resources on the cloud, but there is one problem. Consuming data from the cloud is very, very difficult and is very slow. So one of the things that we see a lot is that actually I can testify to this issue as a former data consumer. It is very difficult to just go ahead and consume data from your data lake. Go ahead and try to plug your BI tool or your data science tool directly to your data lake, and you will find yourself in a little bit of a pickle. So what is going on? The first thing that happens is that you find yourself in a situation like this, where if you need to extract data from your data lake and you need to go ahead and make a query, you need to create a model. If you're a data-driven organization where you're trying to make decisions that are going to improve your operations, you can think also of you're trying to improve your customer satisfaction, sales, you name it. You cannot really afford to spend too much time processing all this data, trying to extract it from your data sources in your data lake, and then trying to bring it to your BI users. And we have seen this happening a lot and taking a lot of time. So what is happening? So you end up with a brittle and very, very slow complex where you have to go ahead and extract the data. Then you have to go ahead and move that data to a proprietary and expensive data mart. And on top of that, depending on the BI tool or the data science tool that you're working with, you end up having to create some sort of extract to be able to analyze that data. So what is happening, and this is something that I'm going to engage with you in a second, Scott, and now we want to engage with the audience. You are seeing in front of you on your screen a question that, and we want you to participate on this. The question is, do you have a data lake in production right now? So while we, and you have two options, yes or no, just go ahead and put submit your question or put your answer in there and go ahead and submit the question. And we are going to compare that information in a few seconds. We're going to leave around a minute or so for the audience to answer. So Scott, I want to bring you in here, and I want you to tell me, have you seen, and if so, what percentage of people, users, customers, or colleagues that you have been dealing with out there in the field have a data lake in production these days?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Lucio. I think there's been a lot of attention on this the last, call it 5 years, and we can even go a little further back with HDFS and Hadoop exploding, maybe in the prime 6 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And so kind of coming from there and into the cloud data lake, I see it very often. I'd say the majority of folks that we kind of work with or engage with already have some kind of data lake, whether it's for exploratory purposes or for really operational use cases. I'd say the kind of detail that folks are using it varies quite a bit. And some of that's depending on kind of the tool set they're using or the various things that were available when the whole system was developed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that is great. So now let's go ahead and see if we can close the poll and see what answers do we get. And I have to confess, Scott, this is the first time I'm doing a poll here with Zoom. So if I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to get all the numbers in front of me as I got the question. And if I don't, then that was fun. Thank you everyone for participating. Okay, there you go. Now we close the poll and now we have the answers. I don't know if the audience is being able to see this as well. I hope they can. And I'm very, very excited to see this because now I see that roughly 55% of the attendees, they have a data lake in production and 45% do not. So let's go ahead and see. Let's go ahead and see how these compare to the results that we have. And just to give you a little bit of background on this, because I don't want any confusion where these numbers are coming from. And I should have started with this at the beginning of the webinar. We had the opportunity to launch survey to our user base, and especially also in a couple of trade shows that we attended last year. I say a couple, and there were a ton of them. And we collected roughly 1,500 responses where we were trying to analyze in a very concise survey what were the challenges that people are facing with the cloud data lakes. So this is one of the very first questions that I wanted to ask the audience, and now we have the numbers are very similar. So we have here roughly 40% of attendees at that point or participants didn't have or did have a data lake, and of those also roughly a little bit more than 40%, close to 50%. Did not have a data lake in production. This also depends on the persona. There is a ton of potential for this data to be sliced. And there is also a good chunk of them that they were not sure. And understandably, I mean, if you're not the kind of person that deal with data, but and the only thing, or the architecture, the only thing that you're doing is just consuming your data, you really don't know what is happening in the background. Now, what I found very interesting is this number right here. Out of those who did not have a data lake in production, roughly 30 to 35% are planning on launching one within the next year or so. And I think this supports the fact of the statistic that we had at the beginning where we were saying that more than 50% of data is going to be in the cloud by 2025, which is just 5 years from now. And remember, then again, I wish I could put that in stone. That is going to happen before 2025. Second question. This is where I want the audience also to jump in and engage with me. And Scott, this is a question for you and I as well. What do you think are the benefits of a data lake? And this is a key question, because this is actually going to trigger the conversation that we are about to have about the 5 reasons. So there are going to be certain options on your screen, and in a few seconds you're going to see another poll. So go ahead and put in there your questions. And Scott, let me go ahead and ask you, what have you seen customers using data lakes for out there? What do you think is the main benefit?
Yeah, loaded one, Lucio. I think we'll get into kind of a lot of the varying benefits and kind of the various levels of details that we can get into with kind of as we address each of these challenges that you have for us today.
Yeah.
But I think one of the main benefits is really having visibility across somewhere where you can have visibility across an enterprise, for example. And having a single place for data is one of the major benefits. There's some complications that go with that need to be solved, and which is kind of the things that we'll touch on today. But I'd say that's probably the main benefit, and why it's so attractive, right? It's flexible, it's very scalable, and it's really cost effective for the actual storage of data.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the beauty of, I think that is the main beauty of working with a data lake, especially on the cloud. How flexible it is to, and there is a lot of people who just go ahead and tell you, hey, don't forget the cloud is somebody else's computer. And I think that's the beauty of it. It's somebody else's problem. All you have to do is just use the service, go ahead and load your data out there. Now, security, while it's still your responsibility, cloud vendors, they have all this awesome technology that is going to help you keep your data secure. The fact that you don't have to worry about the resources. Now you don't have to spend time and money trying to configure your bare bone metal stuff in the back of your data server room, and all these things. Now there's a huge load that is taken away from the shoulders of the user when you go ahead and work with a data lake, especially on the cloud. So I think we closed the poll already. I want to thank everyone for participating on that. So let's go ahead and see if the questions pop in a second. And we have here a big data source for analytics, 38% of the participants. And we also see advanced analytics. There is another option, and there is very similar to an extension of a data warehouse. That's surprising. And then, so we have the two winners would be, I guess, big data source for analytics, and then we have data staging for data warehouse. And that is very interesting to see those answers in there. And now we are going to go ahead and compare this with what we got from our audience. And there you go. These roughly 60%, or a little bit more than 60% of the audience that participated on this survey let us know that advanced analytics is a benefit of the data lake. And then we have data exploration and big data source for analytics as well. And I think those three right here are very, and Scott, feel free to disagree with me here. I think these three are very, very similar in the fact that if you're and I mentioned this at the beginning, if you're a data-driven company, you want to make analytics on your data. You want to do advanced analytics. You want to use the data that you have in your data source as a source for analytics as well. And for that, you need to explore the data. And I think that's why we are seeing this similarity right here on these three numbers. So, and I have my personal take on here. I think if you are a data-driven company, if you are trying to improve customer success, if you're trying to improve the quality of your service, if you're trying to improve the sales of your product, if you're trying to improve anything right now, your decisions will have to be based on data. Otherwise, you're just going to be a person with an opinion. Nothing better than having data and analyzing this. So I think, and I agree with the audience on these results right here, one of the main benefits of the data lake is advanced analytics, is making decisions on, or data-driven decisions on the data that you already have. But then, Scott, this is where things get very interesting, and the rest of the audience, why are you oh, not you, don't take this personally. Why is the audience still not using their big data the way they should? So let's go ahead and talk about this for a little bit, Scott. And I think this is where the first reason comes in. Complex data pipelines. How many times have you seen a situation where you want to go ahead and analyze data? You collected all this data, IoT, manufacturing, production, sales, you name it. And then you find yourself in a situation like this one. And so in this case, this is a use case that I'd like to share because, and in this case especially, 47% of respondents commented that they think the complexity of the pipelines when dealing with data is something that is keeping them from asking big questions. And I want to clarify this, and funny fact, Scott, for those of you who probably already noticed my accent, I am not from around here. And as I was playing with the words for these webinars, for the title of this webinar, I wanted to emphasize the reason of why people is not asking questions against their data lakes, their big data. They're collecting a lot of big data, and they go ahead and ask a tiny question like, hey, just give me, whatever you can. And so it was very interesting to come up with that title, because what I wanted to emphasize is that it's like there is a lot of people not analyzing their entire data sets. There is a lot of industries not taking advantage of the great amount of value that they have. I mean, there is a gold mine in their data lakes, and they're not using it. So the first one is this: is complexity of the data pipelines. And Scott, feel free to chime in here. We have seen many situations where, if you want to, you're a client right here. You're the client. You're the person who is consuming data. Then you go ahead and make what I like to call a pipeline request. You go ahead and say, hey, I need data from ADLS, and I need data from S3, and also stuff that I have stored in Hadoop, optionally some other data sources. But then you find yourself in this situation. Scott, have you seen this happening a lot? You have people trying to create transformations to change data types and do validation, cleansing, you name it.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And I think some of it is necessary, right? There's a lot of business complexity and things like that need to happen, but really there's also a huge bucket of work that happens there, and it's simply just because there's not the right way to do these kind of activities directly in your data lake. And so kind of bringing it out into a warehouse, whether it was kind of the picture you showed before, right, is a great depiction of how it happens, where you need, really it's in lieu of getting the right performance for business consumption, is needing to do these things and get data somewhere else without being able to do those couple of boxes you have there with the validation, cleansing, and transformation. You can't do it directly on the lake today. Yeah,
exactly. And that is a big issue. And that's what I wanted to emphasize here. Like, I mean, wouldn't it be great if you actually just could get rid of that entire process? And I'm not saying you don't need to do ETL. You need to load your data on your data lake somehow. You need to capture your data, and you need to definitely clean it. And I would bet some money on, I don't gamble, but that's just the saying. I would actually say that, and we've heard these a lot, 80% of the time that we as analysts, we as data consumers spend on instead of doing or the time that we spend on doing analysis, 80% of it goes to cleaning data, and the rest of the 20% is on analyzing this data. Now, wouldn't it be great to actually just get rid of all that and and invert that number? You spend 20% of your time doing preparation, and then 80% gaining insights from your data at the speed of thought. In that way, you don't have to, you don't have to turn yourself into a data architect or a data engineer trying to access and clean data and whatnot. So that is one of the insights that I want to share with the audience today. Working with a data lake engine would allow you to get rid of that complexity of the pipeline, which normally is very brittle, is very complex, and very slow. So let's go ahead and jump to reason number 2. Lack of data access and discovery. How many times have you been in a situation where you're trying to work with a data set and you don't know where this data set is located? And this is something that I've learned a while ago, especially working for companies where data lakes were not a thing, and the risks behind not having an actual way to access your data to enhance collaboration with along with your teams in terms of the data, the work that you're doing on your data is a big situation, because especially, I'm going to tell you a story. I used to work at Louisiana State University, and I used to do IT work and all that. But if I needed, there was an inventory that we needed to do. And normally, if I move on with my inventory and then I give it to somebody, that person would have to, if I didn't tell that person where the data set was, they needed to go ahead and create a new one. Then now you have two copies of the same data set that I was working with, two things that the IT department had to worry about securing, because it contained information and serial numbers and a bunch of critical stuff that we couldn't share, or we didn't want to for that to land on the wrong hands. So, and then because I had those two, or we had those two copies of data, then if somebody was going to grab the project and continue on that, they were going to come across two different copies if they found that data set, not knowing which one was the right one, not knowing which one was going to give them the actual results. So then you find yourself in situations where, hey, dude, where is my data? How can I do my work if I don't see if I don't know which data set I am working with? Scott, have you seen this happening? And I know I keep telling you if you have seen this happening, and that is the reason why I have you here. Just spend a lot of time in the field, more than I do. And I'm hoping you have a cool story about this. If you don't, that's fine. But have you seen a situation where lack of data access is a major thing, or is a roadblock when trying to do analysis on, especially on data lakes or big data?
Yeah, absolutely, Lucio. Yeah, of course, right. I think this is something probably everybody in the audience can relate to. And
Mm-hmm.
kind of my perspective on this is, if we actually were able to collect and kind of have good metrics around this stat, maybe a bit more detail, right? If I don't know if anybody has done this before, but every enterprise just has BI extracts and data and Excel sheets and things like this all over the place. And the reason for it is to help people continue to be productive, right? To
Yeah,
drive some kind of insights. It's, well, let's shim the data down, let's aggregate it to a very high level to reduce the number of records in an Excel document or something. And then those things get shuffled around, they get changed offline or sent via email. And it's really because folks aren't able to drive real insights when they're thinking about a question with the current tools, right? Whether that's a
mm-hmm.
Power BI or Tableau or whatever it is. Some of the architectures that folks have today just don't facilitate that kind of interaction from those BI tools directly to their data. And so you create extracts and do all these kind of things. And I think that's really the cause of some of this issue. And of course, you also have the other side of it, which is just the nature of data marts and how they kind of grow as you add applications to your enterprise and different pieces like that. I think that's kind of a natural evolution that occurs. But again, tying it back to kind of the data lake, kind of those, even if those marts are required for various applications or processes, they can all be kind of collected back together in the data lake. And then if we can make that data available to consumers, then we can drive some insight, right? And
Exactly.
data can live where it needs to for its particular purpose, but really have a centralized location to drive some value and insight and really help limit this. I think this is a big inhibitor to really to innovation overall within enterprises. I think it is a big bottleneck.
Exactly, and I want to drive attention to these 46%. And if you pay attention to the numbers that we're showing you here, 46%, and I believe 47% was another percentage that we had in the previous question. That means that these two, reason one, complexity of the pipelines, and also lack of data access, they get almost, that means that most of the audience answered yes to each one of them. And and in this case, not having self-service access would be a big issue. And it goes back to the complexity of like, okay, I want my data, I want to analyze data, and I want to analyze it now. I don't want to wait for IT. Neither does IT want me to keep sending Jira tickets for data requests and a bunch of stuff that we that are going to, as you mentioned, Scott, is going to bottleneck this whole thing. So 46 of respondents, they let us know that not having self-service access is an issue. Lack of knowledge where their data is an issue. And also this, all in a nutshell, compromises collaboration, because at the end of the day, how do I go ahead and share a data set that I'm working with if I don't have a way to catalog this information and share it with my team, or do something that is going to allow us to do agile analytics, and I can go ahead and say, hey, let's you and I work on the same data set and let's apply our tests to these analyses or whatnot, and then let's go ahead and merge those changes. I want to go ahead and make a quick pause because we see a lot of amazing questions that are coming in. One that I want to address, and I see that it was addressed already, I just don't know if everyone can see it, is if we're doing a demo today. Unfortunately, we are not going to have time for a demo. If you want to join us next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, I am going to deliver a live demo next Tuesday, the Tuesday after, and pretty much every Tuesday after that, I will deliver a live demo where you can see Dremio in action. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to step number 3. Reason number 3, security and governance. And I think, Scott, I think this is a juicy one, because it goes back to if you are in a situation where you have a ton of users creating their own data sets, you lose governability of your data. If you have a lot of users creating a lot of copies of the same data set, you are exposed to a risk of a data breach, because a lot of people are going to have a lot of data sets all over the place. This is a very, very important data point that I was able to find a few months ago. Last year, or actually by 2021, which is just a year from now, the cost of data breaches only on the United States is going to accumulate $6 trillion. This is not pocket change. This is a lot of information that is being lost. And on top of that, the complexity of each one of these attacks is increasing by 50%. Bad people is getting smarter, but we need to be even better. So how this relates to the situation that we're talking about here with in terms of data lakes. And this is another reason why many folks out there are still in defense of moving data to the cloud, and it's completely understandable. So we have this broken down for you, and so we have some challenges here. We have management challenges at the bottom, which has to do with auditing. It has to do with defending the rights of users and also protecting data from users using authentication and administration. And on top of that, obviously, some of that stuff can be solved using role-based access control. In addition to that, we have data challenges on the data itself, which is what I just mentioned. You have the risk of losing data. You have the risk of not knowing where the data is coming from, what is happening to the data, who is doing what to the data, and compliance. Compliance is huge. If you all remember, I believe it was in 2016 when we started getting hit with the whole GDPR thing, and then and now we see it all over the place. We have this accept cookies thing, and compliance is huge. And obviously data integrity and encryption. So you have these challenges here. You have to make sure that you're compliant, and you have to make sure that data doesn't land on the wrong hands. And we also have the management challenges, which has to do with the employees, or not employees, but all the folks that are going to work with data that you have in your data lake. So first, this is something that I want to dig a little bit into. because I think, I mean, this could be a topic on its own. The first thing that you need to do is identify what are the requirements, right? And this is something that a lot of people should be familiar with. We have, as I mentioned, we have the GDPR for Europe. We have HIPAA for medical records. You have CCPA for California residents, and you have all these protocols, and all these components or all these requirements meet a criteria, and it's very interesting. Each one of these things can be taken care of for using authentication, access control, encryption, arrested in motion, auditing. Auditing is huge. At this day and age, there is no reason for you not to know who is doing what to your data assets. And on top of that, we also have networking security, where you can go ahead and limit access and whatnot. So here, now we have what are your defense options? There are many options out there, and Scott, I think this is one of the things that we were talking about the cloud data lakes at the beginning, and we talked about how amazing is that there is cost control on data lakes. There is also the flexibility to do to scale however you want, and on top of that, you have a limitless amount of options to defend and protect your data. Quick pause right here. We have an amazing question as well. This is something else that I should have addressed at the beginning. Is this presentation being recorded? Yes, the presentation will be recorded. We are going to publish this in about a couple of days. What is today? Thursday. By Monday or Tuesday, we will have this on our library. The recording will be there along with the slide decks for you to take a look. And if you arrived late or you needed to leave early, you can go back in there, put your information, and you will have access to this. So going back to the survey, 30%, over 30% of users or participants on this survey told us that encryption, compliance, security in general is something that is of a lot of concern when moving to the cloud. Scott, what is your take on this? Have you had situations where, say, for example, you're working on a POC, you're working on a deployment, or you are just educating people in general, security, how often does it come to the conversation? How often does that topic shows up as part of the conversation that you're having with the folks that you deal with?
Oh, always. Yeah. It's top of mind for everybody, which is where it should be, I think. But kind of the ways to solve it are interesting, right? Without being able to drive access directly on the data lake and leverage the data there where it lives, it gets much more complex, because now you have to go through that kind of the pipelining process that we talked about already, which is you're moving data around and creating many more different repositories where data is stored and accessed and needs to be controlled. So a lot of people, either when you have a workflow like that, either you add a lot of overhead by doing security very robustly and properly, you could say, or kind of those controls just get kind of mitigated by creating different data repositories for every team, right? And then the enterprise loses visibility across kind of what everyone's doing or sharing data assets and things like that. So I think there's kind of those two paradigms, and neither of them are phenomenal, right? On one hand, you have a lot of overhead, and the other one, you have a lot of disparate data sources that you're kind of losing some of that lack of visibility, but you do get all the data kind of limited to each team or who should have access. I really think what we've seen and people get success on is when you can drive access directly on the data lake, then and control governance at that layer, you're able to kind of lower the overhead and still get that visibility across the organization, whether it's sharing assets or being able to audit and control things like that. So not only from an end user governance perspective, but also from just kind of back end controls and audit as well, right? Having that single place of where data is being consumed from, I think is highly valuable. And I tools like Dremio and there's other services in the cloud and things like that, but really leveraging the power of the lake where the data lives is hugely beneficial to kind of limit both aspects of that.
And I think one of the keys as well is, and this is in general, if you want security in your data lake, just keep it simple. I mean, we can, and obviously make sure that whatever tool you're using to work work on your workloads, on your BI workloads, or any workload that you have in your data lake, allows you to do encryption, audit and compliance as well, dynamic masking. As Scott mentioned, you want to make sure that though the right person has the right access for to do their job. And but I think the key is to just keep it simple, because one thing that we have been able to observe is, if you apply a very, very complex security structure in your cloud architecture, in your data lake architecture, what is going to happen is you're going to have a lot of people bypassing those mechanisms so they can go ahead and do their jobs. And we have seen this happening many times. People just go ahead and make a copy of a data set on a thumb drive, and then that thumb drive is not controlled by anyone, and then that thumb drive is lost. And so that is because either A, the person is not familiar with all the security processes that you have in your infrastructure, or they are just way too complex, right? So and nobody likes complexity, and I think that is the premise of this presentation. Things should be simple in that way. At the same time, keep it robust, but don't make it so impossible that that people wouldn't be able to, or users, they will just find themselves in a situation where they want to go ahead and skip security controls. So let's go ahead and move on to until what? Nothing. I cannot speak today. Let's go ahead and move to the next point right here. Now we're going to talk about cost and scalability, and I think this is one of my favorite ones. Why are we not using? Let me just emphasize. Why are we not using our big data? And I think one of this should have been reason number one, and I want to clarify that to the audience. We didn't put this in the order is not the prioritization. It doesn't reflect the priority of each one of these cases. But Scott, what do you think of cost and scalability? I personally think one of the reasons is, and I remember when I first started getting my hands a little bit dirty and kicking the wheels around AWS and GCP and of course Azure, I do remember thinking, I don't know that I want to put my credit card in there because these can get out of control quickly, and it would be very, very expensive to I didn't know how much my workload was going to cost. I didn't know what was going to happen. Now it's something that I want to share with you, and this is very, very important. In 2019, 70% of cloud investments went to waste because there is no right sizing, because sizing on cloud computing resources was not doing properly. Let me emphasize this again. 70%. That means that only 30% of what the industry invested on cloud computing, on cloud data lakes, was actually used for what they needed to. Now, why is this happening? Very simple. Let's go ahead and do a comparison between, and we're getting to a point that I'm really excited about. Let's go do a comparison here between what was the data lake before, on-prem, and then what is now on the cloud. So what is happening at the beginning, and is something that you can see here, there is a lot of modernization happening, and we are very, very excited about that. What was happening at the beginning is that if you were working on an on-premise data lake, the solution to improve performance was to just throw more resources at it. The paradigm was more is more. More is better. You want to go faster, go ahead and add more memory. You wanted to store more, just go ahead and add more disk. You wanted to do it. So for a solution to be performant, to be something that is actually what you wanted, you needed to add more resources to it. But then what happened in a situation where you had, say, for example, sales, right? You have a seasonal product. This product sells a lot during the winter, and it doesn't really sell that well during summer. Let's talk about skis or anything related to winter sports. So you have a situation where you have to prepare your data lake and your computing infrastructure for all these high demand. So you go ahead and throw all these resources in there. And then at the end, what is happening is you go ahead and over provisioned, or you provision the necessary infrastructure for these high peak events. And then during summertime, when the product is not selling that well, where you don't have all those workloads, then you find yourself in a situation where you have all these engines running idle, wasting resources, and you are not really taking advantage of that. So there is a situation here with sizing. Scott, have you seen in your experience a situation like this happening before, where tailored sizing of resources have been an issue, depending on the workloads, having too much or having too little of resources on the data lake?
I like this topic, and I think it kind of hints at what the overall name of the game in cloud is, right? And I think that's efficiency, and it's about we have awesome services now in AWS, Azure, GCP, whatever, for any workload virtually. I can just essentially click the up arrow, right, and just pump more compute or pump more resources at the problem, and it'll go faster, or you'll churn more data, or what have you. Really, the name of the game is how to most efficiently consume those resources to get the most bang for your buck, right?
And that is an excellent point that you bring in there, efficiency, because I think one of the things that we're focusing on this year and moving on is not just performance, because performance is there, right? I mean, as you mentioned, just click the up arrow, just go ahead and add a stronger, more capable CPU to whatever instance that you're running. But how about efficiency? Like, I mean, that is performance. We got it. Performance, you check that box. That's fine. But now we want to make sure that, as Minesh here is telling us on the panel, we don't get slapped with a surprise bill. And actually, I want to give a shout out to Minesh Patel. That is a very, very good comment. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share it here. It says, another key challenge related to cost in the cloud is visibility into cloud cost in a real-time manner. You kind of get a slap in the bill on the hand with the bill and then you go into a sticker shock. And actually, this is true. I'm going to share a personal experience that happened to me in a different life. Scott, I don't know if this ever happened to you. I hope it never does. And also, if you can hear my cat in the background, I want to apologize. He's very obnoxious, and I have the gain on my microphone all the way down so he doesn't kind of bleed into the audio. But the experience is that I was working on an automatic deployment that I was trying to do of one of the products that I was working with. And I didn't know too much about all the little knobs that I needed to switch and flip when I was doing my configuration. And there was one setting, and let this serve as a
little microcosm, Lucio.
Yeah. So what happened is, and I want the audience to please go to your AWS accounts and your ADLS accounts and make sure that this setting is not there. So what happens is I went ahead and did my thing with my EC2 instance, and then I shut it down at the end of the day. So I was like, okay, I'm done with my test. I'm done with my demo, and I'm going to shut it down. Went home. I do remember I took my family down. I live in Florida, so I took my family for a weekend trip out in the beach. And then when I came back on Monday, and as Minesh was saying a few minutes ago, at the end of the month, I get a bill for over $2,000 on an EC2 instance that I thought I had shut down a month ago. So needless to say, that was a very awakening moment. It was very scary. So the reason was because there was a switch in there, that's a setting that said there was a protection setting on my EC2 instance that said if the cluster goes below a certain amount of nodes, just go ahead and relaunch 5 more. So there is no downtime on the settings. So yeah, people, don't let that happen to you. Don't be as stupid as I was. Check everything before you shut down your EC2 instances. So modernization, reason number 4, cost and scalability. That is one of the reasons why people is being shy, or industries are being shy of using cloud data lakes. But now we're focusing on providing solutions and using solutions that are going to allow us to have better performance and use and get, as Scott said, have more bang for our buck. We're getting close to the end here, folks. Bear with us. Now, reason number 5, performance. Scott, I think this is right here the key, performance. Now we had I should have said here performance and efficiency, but I think performance is key. I mean, you want to do analysis on your data, and that has to happen, I mean, almost at the speed of thought, right? You want to go ahead and, if you're capturing sales data and you need to go ahead and create a dashboard for your boss or your entire team for you to create or to provide data-driven decisions, that has to happen fast. You cannot afford the 3 weeks that takes for people to bring data to you. And this is emphasizing the situation that I was explaining at the beginning. Scott, do you want to? You know this as well. Can you walk us a little bit through what is going on here and how we can solve this problem?
Yeah, I think this is the right time, and performance kind of to me it encompasses the whole picture, right? Where it's not only just query performance. We touched on it a little bit with the cost aspect, which is we can get the performance, right? We can add more nodes. We can add more compute and get the performance we need for whatever workload. Really, it's about the overall performance of a solution. And I like to think of it and bucket it in with even organizational performance, which is how do we enable the consumers of this data to get access and make it fast enough where they can really drive these kind of insight-driven decision-making.
Exactly.
I think you lose a lot of that intuitive curiosity about a certain data set or things like this when you need to maybe go through a request or wait a month of lead time for data to be curated and provisioned and then access, and then, oh, I missed a column, so now I need to wait another month.
And that is the worst. The worst, when you are trying to create a report and suddenly you go like, oh shoot, I meant to slice this by region. And I don't have region in my data set.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this picture kind of encompasses that journey that a lot of people you kind of end up with, and it was just out of need, right? It was out of needing to get that performance and maybe not having a great option directly against the data lake storage. And I think that's kind of where we've ended up the past 4 years or so. People have been building and kind of a lot of data being pumped to the lake, like we showed before. And now it's a matter of, well, what's the right solution to really all the pieces we talked about, secure, gain access, expose that data, and then all without needing to do a lot of complex and brittle kind of development just to expose it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And then, at the end, it boils down to performance, efficiency, and that's why we want to introduce you. And this has been brought to you by Dremio. And this situation right here, Dremio, the data lake engine, will allow you to get rid of all those complexities. And once you deploy, you can start analyzing your data right away. And we have a lot of stuff coming up, and it's super amazing to see how, and you will see it on the demo as well. Hopefully we can see most of you in the demo that we have prepared for you next Tuesday. And you will see how fast you can just go ahead and connect to your data, start analyzing your data, and you, even if you need to do transformations through the pipeline on any field, any data cleanup, you can go ahead and do it there as well, and you will see how easy this is. So bottom line, we talked about the 5 reasons why the industry is not asking big questions to our big data. They're still asking small questions, they're being shy. Reason number 1, we talk about complexity. Reason number 2, we talked about all data access. Reason number 3, we were talking about security. Then we were also talking about performance and efficiency. And here we are. Now you know the reasons. Now you know how to solve this. And there is a question that we got in the Eugenio, muchas gracias. This is a quick pause here. I'm going to talk to my friend Eugenio from Spain. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Yo te voy a enviar personalmente la presentación para que la puedas ver, ¿ok? Que tengas muy buenas noches. Gracias por estar aquí. All right, going back, my apologies. This one question that came in is, are these the definite, at least, of challenges? And what you're seeing here is no, we try to condense all these answers into groups that made more sense. But as you can see, data cleansing, data discovery, security, access, scalability, integration, lineage, knowing what is happening to your data, knowing who is doing what, cleaning data, as I mentioned at the beginning, that is a big issue. ETL, all these things, they are a very, there are challenges still out there when using data lakes. So that brings us here, Scott, to the Q&A. Isn't this exciting? Thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us. Now we're going to go ahead and read a couple of questions. And there is a quick question here, and do you mind giving some context with respect of data modeling? I am so glad that you asked that. If I'm pronouncing this correct, I believe the name is Bascara Vena. So this person is asking if we can share some, what I would call best practices on how to model data on the data lake. If you go to our site, go to our library right now, go to dremio.com/library. You're going to find there a very, very cool white paper that we publish on best practices on the semantic layer using Dremio. You're going to find a ton of good information in there on how to perform this. And as we come to the top of the hour, I want to invite everyone to visit our tutorials and resources. You will find a ton of information in there on how to use the data lake engine with the technologies that you have. Remember, one of the beauties of Dremio is that you don't have to go ahead and teach your users about another BI tool that you want, that you have to use. They can continue using the tools that they work with. Just connect to Dremio and start doing analysis on their data in a self-service manner. On top of that, Dremio University, if you have not joined it, please go ahead and take a look at Dremio University. Is a free online learning platform where you, guess what? You can launch your own virtual lab with Dremio Enterprise Edition in it. Kick the wheels, do the exercises, try it out, let us know what you think. There is also a completion certificate that you can go ahead and print. And in addition to that, hey, Dremio community is free as well. You can ask any questions that you want in there. Go ahead and post your questions. But that is it for me. Scott, thank you so much for being here. It has been an absolute pleasure. Anything that you want to add for the kids in the audience?
I don't. Not right now. Feel free to send us some notes or post in the community, and we're happy to engage over there for anything we didn't get to, and we'll reply via email. Thanks for having me, Lucio.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. For all of you out there, thank you so much for participating today in the questions, in the polls. Thank you so much for being here with us today, and we hope to see you again. Thank you, and bye-bye.